Upon succeeding his predecessor Daniel Toroitich arap Moi after failing to secure the seat 3 times and serving as a member of the opposition, Stanley Emilio Mwai Kibaki, the third president of the Republic of Kenya, was a man on a mission.
President Moi should explain to the Kenyan nation why we need to be occupied by foreign troops when we can protect our own country.
Top of his plan was eliminating corruption in the country. Kibaki was also keen on uniting the country and rooting out tribalism and nepotism that had found a home in this country.
Mimi Mwai Kibaki naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Kenya.
Close associates, friends and former ministers have termed the former economist as an icon who will be remembered for years to come. I spoke exclusively with former ministers who served the Kibaki's government, who have heaped praises to the former president. Former local government minister Musikari Kombo has termed the former president as a man who had an eye for the economy.
He was not a very controversial person, a very clear thinker in terms of the economy. He knew exactly where the country should be going economic-wise. And as you know, when he took over, the economy was growing, was in negative growth. In no time, the economy was growing above 7% because of his policies for economic recovery.
He was a president capable of choosing somebody who could help him govern. Although, of course, the fact that I was picked as an assistant minister together with my friend Miroge Kariuki, we were still not given a lot of responsibility as assistant ministers. And we complained that assistant ministers are not used anywhere else except in Kenya.
So Kibaki was and he did not entertain the intricacies in government. You know, in government there are always what you call the deep state, and there are a number of other people who are there and everything. People who whisper into the ears of the head of state and the rest. Kibaki, I'm told Kenyatta one also had a similar style of management.
I think every person in Kenya clearly knows Mwai Kibaki, what he did for this country. And I think he's one of the best presidents we have ever had in this country.
We want persons who are known that they are straightforward persons. People at least who have had an opportunity but did not steal.
Before being elected in 2002, the man from Othaya had sought the presidency 2 times. Kibaki would win the top seat 2002, where allies came together in an effort to oust Kenya's second president, Daniel Moi, under the banner of National Rainbow Coalition NAC, a multi-party alliance that nominated Kibaki as its presidential candidate. Kibaki would trounce Uhuru Kenyatta, who immediately conceded defeat. Among the many people who were his strategist was former Nyeri legislator Wanyiri Kihoro, who helped Kibaki ascend to power.
I did make a contribution of 17 million shillings to the Kibaki Fighting Fund to become president. That is money that many people know about. I did that with my late wife, Dr. Wanjiru Kihoro, and we took that money to President Kibaki in a plastic bag. He couldn't believe it that people could be so honest in terms of doing that kind of thing, do a fundraising which even the people who will benefit don't know, but you take the money to him. And that money was very important in terms of fueling the opposition campaign, in terms of bringing Kibaki to power.
Kibaki, a man who was full of energy, had however been confined in a wheelchair few weeks before elections.
We are truly unbogable, and we are bound to succeed.
There was also another accident. This one came immediately after Kibaki won the elections. It would involve the high and mighty in Kibaki's government. After Kibaki successfully won election, Raphael Tuju, then tourism minister, was in the company of NAC politicians who had gone to Busia for a homecoming party to celebrate their 3 weeks old election win. In one plane was Robinson Githai, Wanjiru Kihoro, George Kaniri, Martha Karua, then Justice Minister Anlina Jebi Kilimo, among others. Mudi Awori, a minister of Home Affairs at the time, had played host at his Funyula home, but on their way back to Nairobi, the worst happened.
At 5 p.m. in the afternoon on the 25th of January 2003, that is when the accident happened. Unfortunately, my wife went into coma, and all the others were injured, some of them not very badly, including the current Secretary General of Jubilee Party, Mr. Tuju. They were all on board. I think there were about 10. Unfortunately, 3 people died on that when the aircraft failed to take off at the end of the runway.
The worst was about to happen and would injure a relationship that was built over many years. Wanyiri, who had partly financed Kibaki's campaigns, explains to us how he fell out with President Kibaki after he failed to visit his wife at the Nairobi hospital. To Wanyiri, it was unacceptable.
It's like, Nairobi hospital is just a walk away on Woodland Avenue. From State House to Nairobi hospital is basically a neighbor. And he did not see her in hospital. And when somebody is unwell, sick, even some of us who have been fighting some other ideological opponents for a long, long time, if somebody is unwell, take a break, go and see that person in hospital, tell him Paul.
Kibaki, the man known for peace, was now courting controversy. In a shock move in 2004, he appointed 5 new cabinet ministers and a host of new assistant ministers drawn from the main opposition party and from Ford People and his own ruling National Rainbow Coalition party. But he was firm in what he expected from his cabinet.
I expect the new ministers and assistant ministers to strictly adhere to a new code of conduct and a management accountability framework.
There's a whole gamut of bills that went through which were meant to help in the fight against corruption. They went through. But whether they were implemented and is another question, especially thereafter. Yeah, exactly.
In the same breath, he also dropped 6 permanent secretaries, 2 of whom had been mentioned in the 2.7 billion passports tender scandal. At that time, some members of parliament appointed to the new cabinet refused to take up their positions.
I was the one who said I will not take your ministerial position unless the following are done. Because by then, we were working together. I was the chairman of Ford Kenya. Okay? And he went ahead and picked ministers, even from my party, without consulting the leadership of Ford Kenya. So that's why I then said, sorry, unless we consult, unless we talk to each other, I'm not going to take the position. And we did talk and we agreed. I mean, he was a gentleman. He understood logic.
Kibaki had promised to fight corruption and he was willing to go. He had also asked donor countries to be patient as he continued to wage war on graft. He admitted that the public and donor countries had high expectations of his government's ability to speed up the fight. However, from insiders, his cabinet would not miss 2 or 3 leaders with selfish interests.
All these bills, there's a whole gamut of bills that went through which were meant to help in the fight against corruption. They went through. But whether they were implemented and is another question, especially thereafter.
Kibaki himself, I don't think, believed in a system where corruption was to be fought to death. Or somebody who was willing to punish his friend or prosecute his friends and important persons in his government when they were involved in corruption.
After falling out with his one-time ally Raila Odinga and the subsequent defeat in the 2005 referendum, Kibaki was facing a mammoth task of being elected back into the office in 2007. After experiencing a hotly contested election between him and the new opposition chief Raila Odinga, the country was plunged into a crisis when Kibaki was declared a winner of the presidential election amid fraud and vote-rigging claims. More than 1,500 Kenyans lost their lives in the post-elections violence that followed.
Yeah, I think probably that is his darkest moment. Not just for Kibaki, I think for everybody, for the whole country.
So I would not mention names, but seriously, the leadership of my party wanted us to go that direction. And I told Marende, you can't. You cannot go in that direction. The nation is bigger, and you can't play politics from that, from this because of a chair.
Tolerance, violence, and divisive politics must have no place in Kenya.
However, months after the contested elections, he would shake hands with Raila Odinga, and Odinga would become Kenya's second prime minister. Kibaki, now working with Raila Odinga, fought very hard while in government to have a new constitution. Through the new constitution, he envisioned a country united and upholding the rule of law.
This is the most important day in the history of our nation since independence.
The clamor for a new constitution was in part necessitated by increasing dissatisfaction with the country's governance structure, marginalization of communities and groups, and limitations on civil and political liberties.
The constitution in our case is the British don't have a written constitution, but in our case, because mainly borrowed from it in the US and all the other constitutions which we modeled ours under at Lancaster House, he never interfered with that. He never undermined it. You see what I mean? Never undermined it. And he gave you a position as a minister. He allowed you to perform. He did not micromanage you.
Former Runyenje's MP Njeru Kadhangu at that time was leading a democracy lobby group to have the new constitution.
We must look at it democratically. Kenyans must be involved. Kibaki was part of that, to say, yes, we must involve Kenyans. Yes, we must make sure that Kenyans understand it. And lastly, is that this constitution should not be hurried. Let us go pole, make sure that we finish it, and then for our children's children.
On August 2010, former President Mwai Kibaki led Kenyans in the promulgation of the new constitution.
We recognize and identify with the desire of the majority of Kenyans for genuine democratic change.
Among the development records achieved by Kibaki is the construction of the famous Thika Superhighway Road and making quickly turning around to Nairobi as a business hub.
There was a man from Rwanda called Kaberuka who was helped by Kenya to become the boss of African Development Bank, ADC. You can check with Governor Haemba of Trans Nzoia. He was then working in ADC. I mean in the African Development Bank, ADB. Now when Kaberuka to come and say thank you to Kenya for having been assisted, you know, those positions, there's a lot of campaign, wanted to do something for Kenya. So he was taken to Kibaki and told the story, you know, your people helped me and I would like to do something for you. And Kibaki did not even blink. He just said, let us do Thika Highway.
Was one gentleman who believed in the budget making process. Once something is in the budget, then that is exactly what was going to be done. And the budget, of course, is done by Parliament. So the entire country, if you look at some areas in this country that before had no tarmac of roads, today they have a lot of it. And I think you can clearly see northeastern. You can see some other areas in coast. You can see western, in central as well. I think his record in terms of environment was cutting across the entire country.
Nairobi irudishwe ilipokuwa, a beautiful city in the sun.
Kibaki was also known to be free in his speeches, and he never failed to crack the country.
Kuna mwenyewe hapa au ni mama au ni baba angali anajivuna kutembea mbele ya watu na hana aibu. Mtu kama huyo ni bure kabisa, anahitaji kutwagwa makofi. Unakuwa na maana gani duniani ikiwa wewe kazi yako ni wizi wa ng'ombe? Kweli una maana gani? Huna maana, wewe ni binadamu ya mavi ya kuku.
Hata gari yangu naona inatoroka yeye bure. Mwambie arudi nyuma. Ni pumbafu kabisa.
Kibaki, the man with many hats, will go down as a mentor and a leader who left the country on the path of greatness after improving the economy to almost double digits, especially in his first term. The late former President Mwai Kibaki pledged to restore the authority of parliament and independence of judiciary, both of which had been eroded as part of the country's democratic process. Paul Kirobi, TV 47, Nairobi.